Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Energy Realities podcast. My name is David Blackmon. I'm here in Texas, where the weather is beautiful and lovely, and we're not worried about gas prices at all. Um, so I'm just kidding about that. I figure they're probably going up 20 cents this morning. We are back with our podcast today, and in the midst of this ongoing conflict between the United States, Israel, and Iran, and my video is really doing weird stuff right now. With us today is our normal co-host, Irina Slav in Bulgaria. How are things, Irina?
Great. We just voted for the 8th time in the past, what was it, 3 years or something? But for the first time in these 8 elections, we have a clear winner. And that winner would not have to form a coalition. So that's a refreshing change, because they could form a government faster and start doing their job, hopefully. We'll see how it goes. But it's a nice change.
Is that going to be good for energy in Bulgaria?
I really don't know. I don't know if it's going to be good about anything in Bulgaria, but I am cautiously optimistic. Let's put it this way.
Okay, well, good. That's
very
a good
cautious.
sign.
Yeah.
Also with us today is Tammy Nemeth in you're in the UK.
Yes, I'm in the UK.
Not on a beach in Bali. I was curious about that.
I wish it was warmer. It's 12 degrees and I'm outside, so I got my hands in my pockets trying to keep warm. But
what is that?
Yeah.
That's like 50 degrees Fahrenheit, I guess, something like that.
It's coolish.
I have a hard time with those conversions anyway. Well,
Yeah.
try to stay warm. We're glad to have you with us. We didn't think you were going to make it today.
Yeah, I got to my appointment early, amazingly, at the dentist and got through really fast, which is incredible. Normally you have to wait and wait and wait, but yeah, so
Very cool.
all good.
Stu Turley is back in his bunker in southeast Oklahoma. How's everything?
It's just a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Can't buy this kind of entertainment.
You do any backhoe work this weekend?
No, but I actually got into the garden and stripped out all the old beds and got all new ones. Got about 20 plants all in there. I got a new tree to put in. Life is good.
You got a lot of energy, man. Wish I had that much energy. Anyway, okay, let's talk about energy. We have the Strait of Hormuz was reopened Friday afternoon, reclosed overnight Friday. Prices dropped after Iran declared it reopened about midday Friday here in the United States, and prices dropped by 11%. WTI was down at 83, Brent was at 85 or 86, and everybody thought we were on, we were going to $3 gas again with a bullet. And then overnight, Saturday, Iran announced it, Iran's military announced that no, the strait's really not open. It's really closed, and started turning back ships. And this morning we are at $95 Brent and $89 WTI. And I suspect we're going up from here until, it reopens again before it recloses again. I just honestly, it's hard to keep up anymore. I try to do it on my Substack and other writing, and it's just impossible. And I don't know. Let's see. What should we do first? We have a chart. Stuart has brought a chart today showing that it doesn't. Oil prices don't just break down along Brent and WTI indexes. Those are futures trading for futures contracts. But where you're looking at physical deliveries, there's all these other pricing points that have an incredibly wide range of pricing. Who wants to try to describe how this all? Stu, since you brought the chart, let you start things off.
I'd like to say that there is a very huge disconnect between paper and trying to actually get a physical delivery. Normally, you see that these things kind of match up eventually. And when you sit back and take a look at the emotional trading that is going on right now is very frightening. When you look at a Chevron chart or an Exxon chart, they are now trading way back when their earnings, I mean, I could even go look at the exact dates. Nothing is matching up. And LNG, Cheniere Energy, was trading over on Friday. It went down for no reason. Even when you have 17% of the market offline, they should be going through the roof. So there are things going on. People do not understand the difference. Let's take a look at this chart. One of the things I want to really point out is Western Canadian Select physical delivery of pipe 7270. Canadians, yay! They're all going, yay! We're making more than $3. Absolutely wonderful for the Canadian imports to the U.S. But you take a look at WTI physical Cushing 87.77, but look at 40s, which is the physical out of Dubai area, 134.45. When if you
40s is the North Sea, Stu.
do what? North Sea, thank you.
40s, it's North Sea.
That's
Thank
North
you.
Sea. Okay. That
But
makes
when you
sense.
still sit back and take a look, it is absolutely a mess when you try to take in a delivery of a tanker. It's different. And that physical difference is going to make a gigantic change to consumers at some point. I don't know when.
It's interesting. The Oman physical must be their ability to deliver outside of the Persian Gulf into the Arabian Sea, right? And what is Tapas? Does anybody know what Tapas is? I'm trying to figure out if any of these are the loading point in
No,
the Red Sea for Saudi Arabia's pipeline.
Let me look.
Tapas might be that. Yeah, 40s in the North Sea. Wow, $135. I guess obviously that's just due to high demand right there in that region for that crude, since they're not able to get shipments from the Middle East. Well, this is all very interesting. And then you have Western Canada Select that way down there at the bottom. Holy smokes. That's just why? Because there's so much of it.
Yeah. I mean, we import a huge
Yeah, I mean,
chunk.
yeah, it's 5 million a day coming to the United States. So, whoops, we lost Tammy for a second. Now she is back in. Let me see if I can activate her again. There we go. Sorry about
Sorry,
that.
guys. I touched a button. Sorry.
I like this comment. The trader's knees. Where is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, traders.
Let's see.
Whoops. Where are we? Traders. Traders' knees must be getting sore from all the knee-jerk reactions. Yes, and my neck is getting sore from swiveling, back and forth. That's the thing that closes and reopens. Canada needs 94 a barrel to make a profit from their oil. Until that happens long term, oil fields remain closed. But their oil fields are very much open. I don't understand that comment.
I don't either.
Maybe it's oil fields other than the oil sands in Alberta. I don't know. Tammy, do you know what that means? Are there a lot of oil fields in Canada that are closed right now because the price is too low? I don't think Tammy can hear us. Tammy, can you hear us?
She's on mute.
Let's see if we can unmute her here. It won't let me unmute her mic.
No, she has to unmute herself, I guess.
Anyway, so just, I mean, I think that was a good exercise in pointing out the complexities of the markets here and traders. I don't know how they do their jobs. I'm glad I'm not part of that world.
Yeah, me too.
So we have this other situation now. It's not just oil. We always talk about oil, but you have the LNG situation. Obviously, Qatar is down. Most of their production's down, although I believe they've gotten some small portion of it back online, or will later this week. But LNG prices have gone through the roof because of that problem. And in Europe, I saw today that storage levels are well below the 5-year average, and the continent is going to have to source cargoes somehow from somewhere to refill storage. Now that we're out of the heavy usage season into the shoulder season, and I don't know, and I just wonder if Irina or Tammy knows if the countries there are having success finding alternatives to the crude that had been coming in from Qatar. I mean the LNG, excuse me, not crude.
LNG. Well, they are importing record volumes of US LNG, but they really have to step this up as refill season gets underway. But it's interesting that Bloomberg's Javier Blas said the other day on X that prices are pretty much back to normal, which they're not, and there is not going to be a gas crisis in Europe. Well, not now, because demand is down,
Right.
but apparently so are prices. Prices are normalizing, still higher than they were before the war started.
How interesting.
But normalizing, yes, isn't it interesting? It's just as interesting as the fall in oil prices after the latest update on social media. Prompting optimism, which is unfounded, as we see, because the strangest thing to me is this divide between futures prices and prices for physical delivery. It looks like a lot of people just don't care about this. It's a crisis in progress. And every serious analyst is saying that it is. It's not happening suddenly, it's happening gradually.
Yeah.
And the really serious analysts, of whom there are few, have been warning about this. Don't follow social media. Follow the physical flows of both oil and gas.
Yeah.
I mean, the EU has been buying nearly every cargo out of Novatek's Yamal LNG while they can. And they want to ban it, but first they'll stock up. They can't refill their storage with Russian LNG alone. That's preposterous. They will have to
Right.
start buying more American LNG, which is where this deal with Trump that Ursula von der Leyen signed last summer comes in, because it includes a commitment. This deal is now suspended because, Brussels is not happy with Trump. But at the same time, they tweaked their methane regulation about LNG imports so they can keep importing American LNG. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I'm
Slowly
so glad you
improvement on the
mentioned
front.
that methane regulation, because it's very fascinating to see how that there was a lot of pressure being brought to bear on the EU, because the way the American gathering facilities are for export, you really can't comply. And so then it would be like this 20% tax on or fine for your global sales if you can't comply. It's absurd the way it works. So the bad part is that they didn't repeal it, and it's kind of like in Canada, where they leave all these regulations on the books and then they give an exemption or a carve out, or we're just going to tweak it a little bit, we're not going to get rid of it. You shouldn't have it in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah, but now that they already have it, it would be
never giving it back.
embarrassing to repeal it. But they have realized that American LNG is already expensive. With this methane regulation, it will become unaffordable. They won't be able to buy it. And they have no sensible alternative, no viable alternative. So, I think they're trying to save some money before they shelve this regulation indefinitely. But speaking of LNG, I wanted to ask you, Tammy, did you see the news that Australia has sent a cargo of LNG to Canada?
Yeah. that went out to the East Coast because just the way that the arrangements go, that it's not worth it to build a pipeline to the Maritimes, and they were getting a lot from the United States and stuff, and so when things got,
why aren't they getting it from the Gulf, the U.S. Gulf Coast? It's nearer. I mean,
I know it's nearer. It depends on how the flows go and what's available at the time and whatnot. And, they used to have natural gas offshore Nova Scotia that went into that jurisdiction, but Sable Island was decommissioned. I think they started decommissioning it in 2020 and then completed a year or so later. But they're looking at doing more exploration. But I think one of the reasons why they didn't try to do enhanced recovery or whatnot was because of the rules in Canada. Are you going to be allowed to do it? How long does it take to get these approvals going through that whole process? But now they're talking, okay, maybe we're going to do something off the coast of Nova Scotia again. So we'll see. But it would make sense to build a pipeline from there's currently natural gas that runs from Western Canada into Ontario and Quebec, but to extend that pipeline into the Maritimes when there's quite a lot from the Marcellus and whatever, coming in from the United States, the economics, honestly, there's not enough people who live there to pay for it. And unless you can then have a spur line that goes down into the United States to take some of it to make it more economically cost effective, which is basically how most Canadian pipelines operate, it's not going to happen. So instead they import. And this is the thing about if they want true national energy security in Canada, who's going to pay for it? And ultimately it comes down to who's going to pay, and people don't want to pay.
Yeah, but just Australia is so far away.
I know. But it's like the steel or whatever that came from Japan via Australia or something to the UK.
Oh my goodness.
That was last year, and these things don't make much sense when you think about it, but clearly there's some kind of price.
How about California banning U.S. drilling on the largest field is even bigger than Texas, and then they import Russian oil that goes to India, gets refined, and now they import 40 to 60%, depending on the time of the year and the blend. 40 to 60% of their diesel, jet fuel, and gasoline are imported in the largest state's traffic in the United States.
Yeah. It's a national security risk, honestly. And if you want to talk about energy dominance, how can you have energy dominance in the United States when you have one of the biggest economic state drivers in the nation so vulnerable?
Yeah.
Energy security starts at home. Energy dominance is displayed through your exports. We are claiming to be energy dominant, but you take a look at California, it is a black eye on the energy dominance theory of the Trump administration.
For sure. Can I make a comment on one of the comments where they were trying to say that the break-even point for Canadian oil is $94, and that's just not true.
Yeah, I don't understand that. I don't know how that can be possible. I mean,
it's
the oil sands
like
oil
40.
is some of the most low-cost oil available anywhere, isn't it? Isn't there
Well,
costs like $12 a barrel or something like that?
I think it's like a $40 a barrel. It depends on which way you're doing it, if it's mining or if it's the in situ SAGD.
Right.
But it's not 94.
It's around the 25 to 30, depending on the area.
Yeah.
So no, it's very affordable.
Yeah.
So speaking of affordability, Chris Wright over the weekend on Sunday, it was on Meet the Press, and he made a really good point that is not making a lot of sense to me, or part of this crisis that isn't making a lot of sense to me. And he pointed out the fact that we've got the biggest disruption in energy flows in history. We've had it, and it's been in effect for 7 weeks now. And yet gasoline prices in the United States remain $1 lower per gallon, more than $1 per gallon lower than their peak during the Biden administration, which happened in 2022, right after Putin invaded Ukraine. So why did Ukraine, I mean, does anyone have an explanation of why prices spiked the way they did in the wake of that invasion of Ukraine? So much more than they have spiked now in the wake of we're in a global market that is 7 to 10 million barrels per day undersupplied and have been for 7 weeks now. And yeah, we've had an increase in gas prices of about $1.05 a gallon in the United States, but not $2.25 like they spiked in 2022. And it doesn't make any sense to me just from a pure supply and demand standpoint. And I wonder if anyone has any explanation of exactly what's happening here. Is it all due to the propaganda that was flying around after Russia's invasion? Or, I mean, if you remember, that price spike lingered for months. I mean, it was so severe that Joe Biden decided he had to decimate the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve because of it. And it's a really interesting point that I hadn't heard anyone make yet. Anyway.
Well, here we go. Aslan pilot car. Prices are being manipulated. Traders learn their lesson. And when I say traders, I mean the big guys, not day traders, individual.
David, can I throw this up here just real quick? Typical break even in Canadian oil field sands, USD, existing oil operations, $18 to $45 with an overall average of 27.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks.
So back
to
Irina, go ahead.
I think prices are being manipulated by the big trading entities, so to speak, and by politicians.
Yeah.
And yeah, at the time, everyone panicked that all Russian exports would be stopped thanks to sanctions, which didn't happen because everyone had sense enough to know that this will be a bad thing. But at the time, we were talking about 3 or 4 million barrels of crude plus another, I don't know, 3 or 4 in fuels, and that didn't happen. Now we have much more serious disruption in supply.
Much more.
But nobody cares because, well, nobody cares on the face of it, on social media, on stock exchanges. It seems like everybody's following Trump's posts on Truth Social or Iran statements and things like that. Nobody is watching actions. And then there is the very curious case, which you mentioned, David, before we went live, of people shorting oil right before a major update from President Trump. That's not peculiar at all. It's not suspicious at all.
I don't know what's going on.
I don't think it needs to be investigated at all.
Okay. Everybody froze there for a second.
Oh.
Something bad is happening here.
I don't know.
Did
everything? Was it just my system that got disrupted? Okay, sorry. I'll shut up.
I don't know. So, and I think stupidity is a factor because those who trade all on financial markets don't really care about physical oil, which is why I kind of fear there may be a greater price shock down the road if this war doesn't end soon. Because, there were doom and gloom headlines in the past few days about the last tankers that left the Middle East before the war began are reaching their destinations in the UK and wherever. And what's going to happen after that?
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's being manipulated, and it's an interesting thing to assess maybe a few months from now as to why the markets aren't moving the way they did after the 2022 one. I think the blowing up of Nord Stream was a big deal and shocked a lot of people. because that's infrastructure that's difficult to redo or whatever. And with LNG, I think there's more terminals, even though there's a bigger disruption. I think there's still this idea maybe in Europe, even though they don't want to use it, that Russia could still fill the gap if necessary.
Russia said they would happily as long as the EU
Yeah.
says okay, but the EU said, no, we won't. We don't want your gas. Okay. Stop offering.
Exactly.
Not really.
Yeah.
President
offering.
Putin 2 weeks ago said, I'm moving all my assets to Asia and I don't want to sell to Europe. I like President Putin for saying that. I think he needs
said
to.
he would sell gas to Europe if Europe wanted it. They're open. But
he will sell to whoever he wants. Turkey is now vying to try to become the gas hub of the world. They've been doing that for decades. But now, are you going to trade pipelines going across multiple fighting zones and multiple areas versus having it on tankers? And it all boils down to energy security starts at home. And it is absolutely what leaders around the world need to take to heart. You can't trust anyone.
Exactly.
Hey, what about this idea about they've resurrected the idea of this oil pipeline from Saudi Arabia that runs up through Turkey, through Syria, and into Europe?
That's what Turkey's trying to become, is the international gateway. And that is exactly what they're trying to do. I got to hand it to them. They've got to be able to say, hey, we are the land bridge and we want to be that bridge. But when you've got pipelines, you may have some Ukrainian divers that I don't believe actually blew up Nord Stream. The pipelines can be done. Now, the pipeline that is over at Yanbu across the Saudi Arabia did it right. They are now putting out 5 million barrels per day, and that pipeline is buried deep. Oh, a drone strike at a substation took it out for 15 minutes while they got it going again. So they did that design right. You can design pipelines right. It's all about cost and decades.
Yeah, but when you do international pipelines, you will need good relations between the neighbors, because a commentator on X suggested that the whole point of the Iran war is that now all the Gulf producers, she's not an oil expert, okay? She's just a political commentator. Now all the Gulf states would want alternative export routes for their oil, and they will probably end up building a network of pipelines leading to Israel, and from there going on to global markets. That's an interesting idea. It would require all these Arab states to put their complete trust in the state of Israel, which is a bit eccentric, you know.
Not gonna happen.
I know.
Interesting
well, I don't
idea.
know. That might happen. Actually.
Sorry.
That might happen. Actually, that was a plan that has been proposed, and they've been working on with India for the last 3 years. And Saudi Arabia right now is really the only Arabian country that hasn't agreed to commit to it. And I suspect, President Trump will put a full court press on Saudi Arabia once this conflict winds down to go ahead and agree to that plan. But yeah, it would use Haifa as the export hub for all that production. And but yeah, I mean, several of these Persian Gulf countries have already, committed that they would support that project or something similar to it. So anyway, and it wouldn't just involve pipelines, involve rail and and trucking routes as well to get that oil out of there without having to go through the strait. Well, something's going to have to happen.
Alternatives.
Yes. Yeah, there's going to have to be alternatives, whether it goes out of Haifa or, a Lebanese port or, Syrian port. You just have to have alternate routes to get this production out of there.
Yeah.
Nigel brings up an excellent point for our podcast listeners. Nigel Peters says, European leaders are a disgrace. They made their bed of energy insecurity, with the exception of France and Norway. The UK honestly believes that vulnerable prices of submarine interconnection are hallmarks of secure and resilient energy system. Wow.
Yeah, I know.
I'm also going to add that France eviscerated their nuclear system and did not provide maintenance for decades on their nuclear fleet. They have 54 nuclear reactors, I believe. They were running at 25% capacity for a long time because of their maintenance was not done. So they took that maintenance money. Now suddenly nuclear is, they've had a realization, well, maybe we shouldn't blow them up.
Yeah.
If I recall, Macron was trying to placate the Greens within his coalition, and they were really against nuclear, wanted to wind it down, and they were talking about phasing it out. So, I mean, the Green menace is a menace in whatever country they operate, because you know they want to put everything into wind and solar and batteries and make electricity availability reduced for everyone and expensive.
Right.
So it's like, well, this will be the limit, and you have to rearrange your life to be around the grid rather than the grid operating for you.
Yep. Patrick Devine, I want to go we'll get back to that in a second, but back to our previous point about alternate routes. Yes, wouldn't pipelines go to the Red Sea versus Israel? The problem with going to the Red Sea, and that is where the Saudis' current pipeline goes, but the problem there is that you have the Suez Canal, which can't handle VLCCs, the biggest class of tankers, and then you have the strait at the bottom of the Red Sea that's right next door to Yemen, which is where the Houthis are. So you've still got that problem of choke points. If you take it out to the Med, your choke point becomes the Strait of Gibraltar. And as long as, sane countries can control that strait, then you don't really have a problem. And that's why they're targeting the port of Haifa or, some port on the Med instead. Anyway, back to nuclear. Yes, France is not immune to the craziness of the anti-nuclear lunatic lobby. They're no more immune to it than the United States and other countries are.
Yeah. What happened with the natural gas in the Mediterranean off the coast of Egypt and Israel? I heard that
the Leviathan field.
Yeah,
they're producing.
It's producing.
It's producing.
It is still producing quite nicely. Egypt has been a very interesting cat. They went from energy exporter to energy importer, and so their policies of trying to go green got them.
I thought that Israel had suspended exports from that field.
They turned them off during the war. They've been put back on. Chevron, and I believe there's a couple others that are operating on there. That was only a couple days shut down while bombs were going off. I mean, drones were going on and off.
Because there was an article saying that Egypt was going to be building this huge wind installation built by China or whatever, and then blaming Israel for not providing them with the natural gas that they need, and so therefore they have to build this huge wind thing that they're gonna pay China to do.
Secretary, let me add this since you brought up the green menace. Secretary Chris Wright, the world has spent $10 trillion on green energy and has only reached a 3% global energy supply. Chris Wright actually claimed that out. I have a problem with my graphic right there. We definitely want energy from everywhere we can get it. We're driving nuclear toward the Trump administration. The last 20 years, the world spent $10 trillion on green energy. It hasn't made it to 3% of global energy. Now, 3% of global energy is because wind and solar, yes, they get to 15% of energy mix, but that is only because electricity is only 20% of the total energy used. That's where his comment is coming from. And so it's pretty amazing when you sit and think that we have spent $10 trillion to only gain 3% in the total energy usage of wind and solar.
Right.
Yeah.
When it's articulated the way that he did it, it makes a lot of sense. It's like, it's a waste.
Well, it is a hell of a waste, but countries continue to double down, triple down, quadruple down on the failure, and the EU may be the prime example of that, but not the only one. And
UK.
Yeah, the UK, Canada, country, and the UK doesn't make any sense at all, particularly on solar, just because of the lack of sunshine. But they just keep doing it anyway. And even China now is warning of a massive overcapacity, and wanting kind of a global conference to talk about how ways to bring some sanity to the solar markets. And that's a really interesting development over the weekend that I thought was kind of ironic. But okay, so where do we go from here? What's our next topic related to what we're talking about? There's so many things.
Okay, so I'm going to throw something out there. Last week, Mark Carney got his majority, and people are wondering, okay, so what is this going to mean for energy? So last week he signed, I haven't read it yet, he signed another memorandum of understanding to facilitate and accelerate the development of a deeper port at Churchill, Manitoba, which is at the end of Hudson Bay, and create an LNG export terminal there. So when we talk about the cost issues to bring a pipeline to extend it from, say, Quebec City or Montreal, where the current natural gas pipeline goes, make it 800 kilometers to one of the Nova Scotia or New Brunswick, and then have an export facility. But they're going to spend all this money to build an LNG terminal in Hudson Bay that's frozen a big chunk of the year. So I don't understand. I'd have to read the proposal. I haven't read it yet. But in terms of cost, I know there's a lot of minerals up there, and so that's why they want to have this deeper port and whatever in order to access and export out lots of key minerals from northern Canada. But in terms of an LNG facility, I'm not so sure that this is a good idea, as much as I like the idea of having another point of egress.
Tammy. It's a great idea. Russia's building icebreaker LNG tankers. Just rent those.
Yeah, I was just going to say maybe Carney's investing in a company that makes icebreaker ships, and we don't know about it.
Yeah, good point. Maybe. I wouldn't be surprised. He seems to have a lot of investments in things that are beneficial.
Doesn't his family live in the United States?
In New York,
I don't know.
He has
I know
not
his
moved
children
to
live
Canada,
there.
and he's the prime minister. Nice.
Well,
No,
I think
he
most of
lives
his
in
investments are in America.
Yeah. So that's interesting, though. I mean, it's interesting to me that at least he's proposing to build a terminal, right? I mean, he's at least not proposing to shut down the natural gas business, and is kind of recognizing reality just by proposing to build a terminal. So that's good. He could be like Trudeau and just saying there's no market for it. So at least we're past that talking point.
Well, I feel like the conversation, he's saying the right words in order to diminish the potential for a vote on supporting Alberta separatism this fall. Because talk is cheap, once you start one of the interesting things is that they've been doing these marine protected areas, and one of the big ones is right in the area where they want to build an LNG facility. And based on what a marine protected area is, you can't have any oil and gas stuff going there. So, he can say this stuff, but when it comes time to get the approvals, I don't know.
Yeah.
He'll say he didn't know about that, or he'll be out of office already. There was a question about what's the current situation with LNG doing to global adoption. Well, I'll tell you, because Bloomberg told us it's affecting it. And Asian nations are turning away from LNG,
Right.
including, unfortunately, in some cases, Vietnam, I think, or was it Thailand? I don't know. One of these was shelving a new gas-powered power plant in favor of solar plus batteries, and that's really tragic because they will realize they've made a mistake, but they will have already made this mistake. Other countries are turning to coal. China is boosting, it's been doing it for over a year now, is boosting its domestic natural gas production. Indonesia is trying to redirect more supplies of natural gas to the domestic market instead of export. So they're dealing. But all these bright outlooks for LNG demand and how it's going to surge while there being a glut, interestingly. They're starting to revise these now because demand is actually being quietly destroyed by prices.
And so what does all this point out, all this fuel switching point out? It is the ongoing indispensability of what? Coal.
Hydrocarbons and coal.
Yeah.
Notably coal.
And,
absolutely.
I mean, you have to have it, folks. You can't run the world without coal. And just we've spent all these trillions of dollars that Chris Wright was talking about, and somebody said that's probably an underestimate, and I think it probably is, but it all depends on how you calculate it. But we spent all that money trying to get rid of coal, and global coal consumption goes up every year, because the laws of physics are laws. They're not suggestions.
Yeah.
And unless we want to just go back to living like cavemen, we're going to have to keep burning coal. I don't know how many times this lesson has to be so starkly illustrated before public officials stop being so unserious about energy decisions that they make. And somebody, and I can't remember who it was that wrote, it might have been Robert Bryce. Somebody wrote a month or two ago that the time for making unserious decisions about energy is gone. Okay, we're past that now. And but I don't think we are. we may be past it in a few countries, but in most countries we're still not even close to being past it. But at least these Asian countries are doing, they're acting rationally. These are rational decisions that they're making.
They don't have a choice.
Yes.
They have to keep the lights on and the economy moving.
Yeah. Anyway.
Well, especially because China has outsourced quite a lot of manufacturing to places like Vietnam, which is interesting. And how are you going to keep those factories going if you don't have reliable energy? Because, China understands about reliable energy. Because even though they've built a lot of wind and solar and whatnot, they've also, as we all know, built a whole lot of coal, a whole lot of nuclear and natural gas, but a lot of nuclear and coal. So, the countries that make stuff understand it. And the countries that are service oriented haven't seemed to got the message yet.
Exactly. Some guy on X yesterday posted a chart about how wonderfully successful China's efforts at electrification have been over the past decade. And I just laughed out loud because the guy apparently has no understanding that electricity doesn't just materialize out of thin air. Okay. Something is generating that electricity. And in China, 55% of electricity is generated with coal. Okay. Coal. And another big percentage is generated with natural gas. And another big percentage is generated with nuclear. This stuff isn't just materializing ether, like Nikola Tesla wanted to do. And, maybe we should have let him do it actually, but that's all 100 years ago. It's the lack of understanding of people just about where electricity comes from. It's just so depressing sometimes. It almost makes you want to slit your wrist trying to talk about this.
People don't even know where their food comes from.
Yeah. Well, they're fixing to find out if we don't get the fertilizer crisis sorted out too, and that's another major thing.
Let me throw this question out to the panel, and I think that people are going to be doubling down on this. Sorry, I was trying to bring. Let me get this one. Remove, add to stage.
There he is.
Take a look at this. Does oil chaos make an argument for renewable energy?
Seeing it.
Are you all seeing this? I am absolutely so tickled by this. That the doubling down on stupid is absolutely hilarious when you sit back and take a look. I'm seeing this all over the place. Let's really double down on that 10 trillion that we spent.
Never let a crisis go to waste.
Yeah. Right? Never let stupid go to waste, I guess.
Yeah.
Holy smokes. So, does anyone have any predictions on when the next moment in time the Strait of Hormuz will be reopened, and how long it will take to close it again?
I think the financial reset is about to happen because it'll be in the next few months. This is actually taking apart the old financial regime that was being controlled out of London and a few other places. This is actually a huge deal. I just want to give YouTube a shout out. YouTube, I have 1,000 people on my YouTube channel, but StreamYard is only showing 105 on our thing here.
That might be a StreamYard problem.
Do what?
That could be a StreamYard problem, not a YouTube problem.
Oh, but I'm sitting here looking at my YouTube and it says there's 8 people on it. YouTube on the front of my YouTube says 8. The back end of the YouTube management system says 1,000, and then StreamYard is showing this over here. So who's telling how many people are actually watching this? It's kind of fun, actually.
Sorry. Well, all 8 or 1,000 of you who are watching this on Stu's YouTube channel, please like and subscribe.
To all of you all.
Yeah, exactly. Goodness gracious. Yeah, social media monopolies are a real problem too.
Yes.
As long, at least we can still get a voice out. And, with all the different rules in the UK and what Canada's introducing, I don't know. I don't know how long this is going to last before there's a list of who's allowed to speak and who isn't.
Well, look, folks, if the elections go back to the Democrats in the United States in 2028, I mean, we're going to be there. That's where we'll be. So you're going to have a hard time finding any information like this anywhere.
Yeah.
And people shouldn't be naive about that. We were almost there in 2022 before Elon Musk bought Twitter, and would have been there.
Yeah. Well, Canada's passing a law right now, online harms or something like this, where they have an extremely loose definition of hate. So basically, if you're insulting somebody and they can take it personally or something, that would be considered hate. So, and yeah, there's some bad stuff going on in Canada that I think a lot of people aren't aware of.
So I'm going to have to stop calling people nitwits. Is that what? Okay.
Those are hurty words.
Okay.
Yeah, but the problem is that if the basis for what constitutes hate or non-hate is the interpretation of the receiver of this information, I could tell a dimwit, oh, you're so beautiful and smart, and they will know I'm being sarcastic and can probably censor me for being hateful.
The anti-sarcasm law. Or you can do like California, where this kid named Nick Shirley is exposed to hundreds of billions of dollars in annual fraud in California. So how do the Democrats in the legislature react in California? They're passing a law making independent journalism illegal in the state of California.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Because I mean, all those people in the legislature have gotten rich off of all this fraud. So, they gotta protect their revenue streams. Anyway.
But doesn't that violate the First Amendment?
Of course it does. But it'll sail through the state courts, and then you get to the Supreme Court and they'll strike it down. But it's just all a game.
And how long does it take for that, right?
Oh, years. Yeah. 2-3 years minimum.
Yeah, that's the point.
That's a lot more money into those politicians' pockets in the meantime.
Yeah.
Oh, I got us way off track. Sorry.
Well, it's fun.
That's okay.
What else did I write about today? Oh my gosh, there was something else I saw in the news this morning, and now I'm forgetting. I got to go. I write these things, and then 30 minutes later, I forget what I wrote about.
Same with me. There's just too much information. We can't retain it.
Oh, this was the other one. Secretary Wright, in that same interview, said he believes that gas prices and oil prices have already peaked due to this crisis, okay, related to the Iran conflict. I just wonder if you guys believe we have seen the highs we're going to see related to this crisis. I'm not so sure about that, but I wonder what the group thinks. Because I just think the longer this lingers, the higher they can go.
We're in a volatile situation and everything is uncertain. And I wouldn't want to say one way or the other. You don't know. Like the fact that, was it a tanker that was hit by the American blockade because it was
It was
trying
a
to run it or whatever?
container ship. And what
You
was it
said
carrying,
merchant.
Stu? What was that container ship carrying?
It was a known missile part carrier for drones and intermediate missile parts from China and North Korea back and forth into their weapon systems.
Yeah. So we don't know what they're going to do. The IRGC is a little bit crazy, and they operate at an entirely different level than whoever Trump's negotiating with. And until you get them under control and but are they even going to admit defeat ever? Because they're crazy. So
they're like the
I
Black
don't know.
Knight in the Monty Python movie. Oh, it's a flesh wound.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but the American leadership is not giving off very sane vibes right now either.
Yeah,
I agree.
I know.
Yeah.
Propaganda's coming from everywhere.
What did you say, Irina?
Said the US leadership is not giving out, except Chris Wright, of course. But the people with the social media posts are not creating an impression of sanity and reason, and that's bad, because instead of one crazy party, you've got two crazy parties, and it's one big party of craziness, which is bad for all of us.
Well, the best advice I ever heard about President Trump is you should take him seriously, but not literally. I think we're seeing that played out in real time every day on Truth Social.
Yeah, I think he should also take some breaks from posting.
Oh, gosh. If only. Yeah.
There's some great conversations coming in across. I'm not sure whose YouTube channel this is on, but there's a lot of great ones in here.
Oh, is this you doing this, Stu? Is that coming in from your YouTube?
I don't know whose it is. I haven't looked, but these are
no
just
idea.
Yeah, they got some great comments.
Crazy is the new normal in 2026. Yeah, well, that's true.
Well, it's a different kind of crazy. We had all the woke crazy.
They have to keep things interesting. You can't have all the same kind of crazy, because we'll get used to it and become complacent or something.
That's exactly it.
At least nobody's trying to hit on me this time, like last week.
Holy smokes, that was weird. That was weird.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, they need glasses. Oh my gosh.
Was it a bot?
Now we're racist. Why are we racist?
Racist channel on YouTube, the best racist channel. What have we said that's racist? I have no idea. It's hard to know.
I've been deleting and banning several as they come in that have been absolutely very entertaining, beyond entertaining. Boom. I'm sorry if you are swearing or if you're putting out bad comments, you will be banned. You will be deleted. Sorry, I don't really care anymore.
Y'all white. There you go.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
We don't
I saw
really
someone
choose color when we get born. So
what does this say? If Canada and Mexico unite with the U.S., this goes to Tammy's comment. A unified North America will be created, fulfilling the New World Order.
Yeah, not going to happen. Mark Carney gave a speech yesterday, his address to the nation, where he channeled the British generals from the War of 1812 and is talking about resisting the United States. And this comes on the heels of Howard Lutnick talking last week about how the Canadians aren't really negotiating for the Canada-US Mexico free trade agreement or whatever.
Right.
And so apparently Canada's supposed to pivot, and there's been all these push pulls and articles written about how Canadians like the idea of joining the EU so we can be a colony once again. Like, really? And so, Mark Carney gives this huge speech. He's got a little lead toy soldier of one of the generals from the War of 1812 and talking about how Canada basically needs to decouple from America. Like, oh my gosh, talk about crazy.
The War of 1812. Holy smokes. Yeah, let's relive that again.
This goes back to about 4 or 5 months ago on this podcast. I believe I said we are going to see some new trading blocks form up. And I believe I mentioned Canada, the UK, and the EU are going to be aligning with China.
Well, yeah, I was saying that too. It's like he's been talking about it forever. Yeah. Which isn't good. Yes. I mean, if North America could be a strong force with reliable energy, affordable energy, America is rebuilding its manufacturing base, and Canada could be participating with that or trying to build our own. But instead, we're going to be having Chinese automakers take over closed EV plants. Like, what are we doing? Where they'll assemble cars like IKEA.
Yep. And who's going to buy them? Who can afford them? Who's going to drive them? Where
they'll
are the
be
chargers
really cheap.
Be?
Yeah. They'll be really cheap and they'll be subsidized.
And they can be charged with that electricity that just appears out of the ether. And so, zero emission.
Comes out of the socket.
But definitely not coal.
This is actually a very astute point. It's funny. The only thing Democrats think obeys borders is carbon dioxide.
Yes.
That's very
beautiful.
astute.
I love that. Yeah.
I wish I'd have thought. I may steal that line and not give you credit for it, William Barry. Just kidding. I won't do that. Volvo and Saab already are part of the CCP. Well, they're certainly look, every car company, every car maker in the world puts parts made in China in their cars. And so it's just a matter of degree how entangled you are with China if you're in the car business.
Have you actually looked at a Range Rover? I mean, looked at the parts list of a Range Rover. Everybody stands there and goes, I've got a Range Rover. There's a lot of Ford parts and Chinese parts in that bad dog.
Well, because Land Rover's owned by India.
Terrible service record.
They're owned by India now.
Yeah.
Same with, and Jaguar was bought before by Tata. The people
has Jaguar started producing cars again, by the way? Did they ever start producing those new weird cars they were going to produce?
They put somebody from Tata in charge now. I don't know what's happened. I don't know.
Well, that ad campaign sure worked out for them. Anyway, it's 8:00. We're running out of time, and this is degenerating. I'm sorry I was such a terrible moderator today. I'll try to do better next time I do this. Luckily, it won't be next week. It'll be Stu. Again, wherever you're watching this, there's going to be a little like and subscribe button. Please punch it. It helps with our metrics. And maybe the YouTube counter will become more accurate in the future if we keep doing that. We appreciate you all for joining us. Wonderful comments today. Wonderful questions. Even and Stu only had to ban about 14 people, so that was good too. Anyway, we'll be back here next week, same time, same channel. Tune in and to the Energy Reality Podcast. That's all for today. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.